So let's take a look at this torso model. And let's identify some parts of the heart and what's called the coronary circulation. Brought to you by Arteries Marine. So what I want to show you is, here's the basic breakdown. And we're going to talk about coronary circuit. We're going to talk about the arteries and the veins supplying the blood to the cardiac muscle. We're actually talking about the tissue that is actually pumping. People take it for granted that that tissue actually has to have a blood supply. So we'll talk about the blood vessels. And so here's some basic terms. I want you to just pause the video for a second and take a look. Perfusion, all right? We're talking about delivering blood to the capillary beds and any type of biological tissue. So now we're talking about perfusion of the heart. I'm going to use two terms, bifurcate, and you'll hear me also talk about draining or collecting blood. See, arteries branch out and as they bifurcate and they go away from the ventricles supplying blood, branching and getting smaller. Venous return is collecting or draining blood. You're going to hear me say the word runs into or drains into. These veins are going to go to the atria. So my students have to learn this in a variety of different ways. And what I want to do is show some models. And so pause the video if you need to take a look at these terms. And here's where we're going to focus on. All right? So what I'm going to do is actually take the heart out. Let's rip this heart out. And let's go ahead and walk through all of this right here. Now, one of the things that my students are going to be expected to do is to be able to look at a heart model and identify the vessels. We're talking about the arteries and the veins that are leaving not the heart to go out to the body, but to go to the heart. So take a second, pause the video and take a look. See, we're going to talk about, all right, here's the aorta. Well, coming off the aorta are the left and the right coronary, and they're going to branch out. And one thing I'm going to point out as we go through this, as they branch, as they bifurcate. Remember, to bifurcate is to branch and split. So see the circumflex artery, it branches from the left coronary. And you'll see these different sub-branches here. Veins, on the other hand, they don't bifurcate. They actually get larger and they combine. The smaller ones will connect with larger ones. Here's another view of just the arteries. So you'll see this. This is supply. This is blood supply for the left side. This is blood supply for the right side. One thing that I'll point out a couple of times is these vessels are not interacting with the left side. Veins, on the other hand, they can be all over. They're eventually going to connect because they're going back to the atrium. Just a quick review. We know that the atria, or the atrium, the right atrium gets blood from the head and neck, from the superior vena cava, and the abdominal areas from the inferior vena cava, which is not shown in this picture. Here's a third drainage of blood, and that is from the heart. So let's talk about the heart. I want to walk through each one of these. A little side note, my students get a handout like this where we say, these are all the vessels that you're required to know. And we're going to do just this. I will do a video later where I kind of use the torso model and point out this. So let's actually use this as a framework here. Let's use the coronary artery, left and right, and then see how we get to this, the interventricular artery, and anterior and posterior. We should be able to link one of these two, connect the A, the anterior, and the P to the left or the right, and you'll see that shortly. So here we go. Now, let's start by seeing if we can identify where blood is coming from when it goes to the body. Remember, we're talking about the left ventricle. So here's the semilunar valve, and we're familiar with this, and you can watch my other videos on the systemic circuit. Well, this is a specialized systemic circuit that we're going to call the coronary circuit. So this right here is a coronary artery, and this is the other. Let's get our frame of reference here. Let's flip it around and look at it like this. So this is the left side now, and this is the right. And if you were to do a coronal or a frontal section and look at, you'll see there's the left, and here's left coronary, and here's the right coronary. So I'm going to go ahead and put the cap back on, and let's watch what's going on here. So the first video I made with heart models, we talked about arteries and veins, leaving and coming back. Well, arteries and veins are leaving, and eventually coming back. So we'll finish with this. So a couple ones on our list. Let's talk about this. We have the right and the left. So let's get your frame of reference. This is left, this is right, standard anatomical position. So you saw where we pulled the cap off to see there's right, there's left. So make that connection. All right. So this is the left coronary artery. Now, some will say, okay, well, we call it here. So you'll notice this big bifurcation moving over here. This is actually going to be called the circumflex artery. Some call it the circumflex artery of the left coronary artery. This is a big one. This is running right down the ventricle, so it's going to be in between. That's where the name comes from, and it is called the interventricular artery. The interventricular artery, and this is the anterior side. Now, this anterior, associate the anterior with the left carotid. Cancel that. It's not the carotid, it's the coronary. So, if you notice, you see the anterior interventricular artery, and here is the, as we said, coronary. My mistake earlier. So here it is branching, and it's going to circumflex. We'll talk about that in a second. Now, here's the one that's running straight down. So I'm missing two of these. We've seen our first one of these, the left coronary, and now we're going to look at the circumflex, and then we're going to jump over to the right side. So left coronary, the circumflex, it's called circumflex because it's actually circling around here, almost like the circumference. But it doesn't connect with this. This is the right coronary. So let's focus on left right now. So this is that interventricular anterior. And as you go here, now these are called marginal. This is a marginal artery. Okay, now we're at the posterior view. But if you followed it, this side, this does not connect to the left. So here we are. So this is the right coronary. Follow it. Then that would make this the posterior interventricular artery. Now, one thing to see is arteries are always running kind of alongside with veins as we do this venous supply. So I'm going to pause for a second and make a quick adjustment. So let's look at the posterior. Now, I just said that the anterior should be associated with the left coronary. You'll notice that it's anterior in front. Well, the right coronary you can associate with the posterior. All right, let's see what we're talking about here. So here's the right coronary, and then this would be the posterior. Now, let's talk about some veins. Okay, so if we're looking at the posterior, this would be the middle cardiac vein. Some actually call this the posterior or the posterior ventricular or interventricular vein, but we're calling it the middle. And so we have, I think we've talked about most of the arteries, but let's look at this. What is this? We've got two cardiac veins that we want to focus. This is the greater cardiac vein. See the greater cardiac vein, and it's going to ultimately take us home to this. We'll talk about that last. So the greater cardiac vein is associated with the left side. Now let's find the smaller cardiac vein. In that case, we'll start back with our right coronary and work our way. We're working our way laterally and actually going anterior to posterior if we make it all the way across. So posterior, and here is the small cardiac vein. So the last thing to finish up this video is we just talked about arteries and veins. So again, the coronaries are going to be supplying blood. The coronaries supply blood. Veins are going to return blood. They're draining. They're combining. So the last thing is, all right, well, let's look at this smaller cardiac vein. We got the middle cardiac vein. And now, let's work our way around here. We've got the greater cardiac, follow, and now we have the coronary sinus. This is going to drain into the atria. So let's open this up and actually see what's going on. So posterior view, the blood is returning from the heart muscles and all the heart tissue here. And let's flip it around. Right here. Remember, you can see it says number 6 here. This is the coronary sinus. You can make a link to there. So venous return from all this tissue. So we've got our superior vena cava, our inferior vena cava, our 2 locations, but then we have a third one. This is a specialized systemic circuit, and that's pretty much the coronary vessels that go with the heart. And my students need to be prepared to be able to identify any of these vessels, both from a picture or from the actual heart. And there you go. All right, thanks.